And in that way, I think that quilting has been a great teacher of patience for me. And, I see parallels, as you mentioned, to nature. I think that when you visit parks, nature is such a great teacher of patience. For example, sometimes the weather may bring in a storm and it may steer you away from your plans of taking a hike, or, maybe you visit a park and you have this goal of really wanting to see an iconic animal that the park is known for. And during your visit, you may or may not see that animal. So, that type of experience is a really great reminder to recognize what is in and out of our control, and just, being patient for future opportunities if something doesn't work out on a certain day.
Welcome to the Quilt Scouts podcast. I'm Megan, your Quilt Scout leader and fellow adventurous quilter. This is a cozy campfire chat for quilters who crave creativity, community, and a gentle nudge to try something new. Each week, we'll talk about quilting and the small adventures that help us grow more confident, one stitch at a time. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get into it. Today, I'm sitting down with Brooke Bauman, a communications specialist with the National Park Service who works in the Water Resources Division, supporting more than 430 park sites across the country. Yes, over 430. Not just the big iconic parks, but national seashores, monuments, recreation areas, and so much more. Brooke's work focuses on helping scientists translate complex research about lakes, rivers, groundwater, and marine ecosystems into stories that everyday visitors can actually understand. In other words, she's helping make the science behind our parks accessible and meaningful. But here's the part that makes this conversation extra special for us. Brooke is also a quilter. She learned from her grandmother, an incredible quilter who passed down both skills and stories. And that intergenerational connection weaves beautifully into her love for places like Rocky Mountain National Park, where her family has gathered for generations. From junior park ranger memories to quilts inspired by Alaska wildlife, Brooke's story is a reminder that parks aren't just landscapes. They're layered with family history, creativity, patience, and perspective. If you've ever wrapped up in a quilt at a campsite, hunted for the perfect visitor center souvenir, or felt inspired by the way light hits the mountains at sunset, this conversation is going to feel like home. Brooke, welcome to the Quilt Scouts podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited for this episode. I know we were just chatting a little bit before we started recording, but this is going to be such a fun crossover episode for our listeners and our Quilt Scout members, a mix between quilting and outdoor exploration. And you work for the National Park Service, but you are also a quilter. So tell me a little bit about your story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will begin with a little bit about my quilting background. So my grandma is an amazing quilter. She has dedicated a lot of her life to the craft of learning how to, translate beautiful fabrics and pull them into a beautiful quilt to share with, especially her family members. And so, that as a personal thing has been really valuable to me to learn that art form from her, have that intergenerational connection. And professionally, I have been working for the National Park Service for the past 2 years. So my career in public engagement has really focused on science communications. So I'm a communication specialist with the Water Resources Division of the National Park Service. And in this role, I'm able to help hydrologists and marine ecologists communicate about what types of technical assistance that they can offer to parks. And this place of science communications, it's really a form of public engagement, because we really want to make sure that all aspects of our work in the NPS are accessible to the public, and that includes science. So really, this is about helping scientists translate technical topics into plain language. In other words, in plain language, essentially, I'm helping people understand how parks use science to protect and preserve resources.
Okay, I love that. So making the science that happens, I guess, behind the scenes at the national parks more digestible, more understandable for the public. consumption. Is
Exactly,
that okay?
yes.
Cool. Oh, very interesting. I actually didn't realize that's what you did at the national park systems.
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
Specifically,
Resources, so you can think of, lakes or groundwater or rivers, all of the different bodies of water that make up the waters of the Park Service.
okay. Is there a specific national park that you work for, work within, or do you cover all of the national parks?
Right. So this office that I sit in is supporting all of the parks within the National Park Service, and that's over 430 parks within the system. So it really covers quite a wide range of locations across the country.
430. That's more than I would have realized. So it's not just the national parks, because it would also be, it encompasses what, national forests and what other, not state parks, right? I guess that would be something different. What types
Yeah.
of parks are we talking about?
Yeah, great question. So, when a lot of people are thinking about, what national parks have I heard of? They may have heard of some of the most popular parks that have that national
Oh,
park
yeah.
label associated with them. But when I say that there's over 430, those can encompass a lot of different parks within the National Park Service. So that can be a national seashore, a national recreation area, a national monument. The list goes on and on. And
Yes.
so
Okay.
that kind of broadens the expanse of, what the National Park Service really is, and also broadens the expanse of the American stories that these parks share.
Oh, I love that. Yes, that's a much broader picture than I was in. I think most of us probably initially picture when we're talking about national parks. But yes, I mean, it covers so much more than just, Yellowstone and Rocky Mountain, iconic ones that we think of. So, oh,
Totally.
interesting. Okay. Well, so before we dive in any further, I have to say I am a huge national park fan, and my family is a huge fan of the national parks. I feel like that some of our favorite memories is getting to hike and explore and find the perfect souvenir from the visitor center. And so much of that has really shaped what we do in Quilt Scouts too. From just the aesthetic, or like the merchandise that we design, the patterns, and just having that adventurous spirit. Like, one of the badges is the Hike for Quilt Photos badge. So getting outdoors, exploring the outdoors, appreciating what we have here, finding the perfect spot for like that quilt photo, the quilts in the wild photo is like, so I feel like
I love it.
iconic for so many of our members, just so I feel like part of our DNA over here at Quilt Scouts. So this
That's
conversation
beautiful.
is really coming full circle for me. And the fact that you're a quilter on top of it is just so perfect. Was there a specific park experience that made you realize that this is something that you wanted to dive deeper into, or really focus on with your work?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. And that's so beautiful to hear about your connection as well to the National Park Service and nature in general, because I think
Mhm.
that really speaks to the mission of what the Park Service wants to do for American people. So, for me personally, Rocky Mountain National Park has been a really special place for me and my family. So my grandpa, when he was a boy, he used to travel from Michigan to visit as a child. And then when my grandpa and grandma were married, they went to the park for their honeymoon. And then they continued to travel there with their kids. And so, as that our family grew during my childhood, the tradition continued, and we would visit Rocky Mountain National Park for reunions with our family every few years. And I remember hiking together, eating ice cream in Estes, and working towards our junior ranger badges. That was another really special part of our experience.
You were a
Um,
junior ranger?
yes.
I love that. I missed
Yeah.
out on that experience. I wish I would have got to do that as a kid. That's so cool.
It was very special. And I think that was a really beautiful connection point with developing a relationship with my grandma. And as I mentioned at the beginning, my grandma is an amazing quilter who has dedicated much of her life to the art. She's taught me everything I know about quilting, and she has been inspired by the park, by Rocky, to create some quilts to kind of capture that magic. And I'm lucky enough to have one of them hanging up in my office and one of them hanging up in my house. And I think seeing those quilts daily inspires me to go to work and help protect parks like Rocky, to be able to protect and preserve those resources for generations to
Oh,
come.
what a sweet and special story. Do you guys still visit Rocky Mountain?
Yes, the last time, so I actually live in Fort Collins, Colorado.
I'm in Castle Rock.
That's so funny. Right down the road. I love it. Yeah, and so I grew up in North Carolina, and so having this park in my backyard per se has been really special to be able to continue to get to see it in a new experience for me has really been seeing the park in different seasons and getting to treasure, you know, what each season brings in the park and what the different types of activities that can bring has been really special. And my grandma has most recently been able to come visit. I believe that would have been about 2 years ago in the summertime. So
Yeah.
that's been really special to continue that tradition as we
Yeah.
can.
That's so when you were talking about Rocky Mountain, I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's just in my backyard. I know where that is. I didn't realize you were in Colorado. How funny."
Yeah,
I haven't been to Rocky Mountain in a while, though. I gotta revisit it. But yes, like you said, seeing it through
absolutely.
all 4 seasons, it's like a different experience every time you go. The summer experience versus the winter experience. I mean, the different animals that you get to see. It's beautiful. Yeah. All year
Absolutely.
round.
Yes.
Okay, so how does storytelling help connect more deeply to national parks and their history, in your opinion?
Great question. So I would say that, as humans, storytelling is it's a human thing. That's how we have evolved to learn information. And I think that, thinking about the storytelling that draws people to the National Park Service. Something that's so special is hearing park rangers interpret park stories. I think that they know the park content and the park story so well, and they're such engaging and effective storytellers. And I think it's just so powerful to listen to those stories about a park and help us really understand the context of why a place is the way it is today. And so, I was just thinking about an example from some of my personal visits to national parks. And recently I visited Black Canyon of the Gunnison and was able to hear a ranger talk about the geology of the canyon. And, I found it quite fascinating to be able to look over the landscape and listen to a ranger talk about the geologic events that led to the formation of the canyon. And I think that added such a depth to my park experience, my park visit. It really helped me begin to wrap my mind around how something so vast had formed.
That's one of my favorite parts of visiting too, is getting to learn the history, like you said, how it came to be in the first place, and then maybe some of the more recent history as far as like the American history goes with it, and the stories that go along with it. It always does. It makes it such a rich experience.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
I'm a science nerd too, so I mean, I love that part of it.
Yeah, right. Just being able to pick up some interesting fun facts to share
Yeah.
with your people.
Exactly, and of course, I dragged my husband likes it too, but my poor kiddo, he's only 5, and I'm sure he's just,
Oh,
like, bored to death, but I'm like, someday you'll appreciate this and you will love it."
absolutely. I agree. I think that's a great way to approach it. National parks are for everyone, regardless of age.
100%, yes. So I think a lot of us visit parks with a big, like, bucket list energy, right? Like, I've learned that the magic is often in the tiny details, like what we were just talking about, like getting to have a conversation with the ranger or learn a little bit of history or science behind it. So, what are some small details or overlooked moments in parks that you wish more visitors noticed?
Yeah, I love this question. I think this is a really great framework to be thinking about. I think that one thing I'd really like to share with listeners is that I believe that all of us, including as visitors, we can play a major role in protecting and preserving our landscapes and park resources, which is part of the core mission of the NPS. So we play an active role as visitors. And I would encourage folks to learn about the principles of leave no trace, to educate yourself on how to leave nature as unchanged as possible by your presence. So I just wanted to share a few of the principles of Leave No Trace. And these are, planning ahead and preparing for your trips, traveling and camping on durable surfaces, disposing of waste properly, leaving what you find, minimizing campfire impacts, respecting wildlife, being considerate of others. These are, opportunities to be good stewards of the parks that we visit. And really, the core goal of all of this is to, improve recreation opportunities for not only us right now, but also future generations and making sure that we're being considerate of the resources that we are enjoying.
Yeah. It's it's funny leave the you referenced the leave no trace. I was just talking to my son about this the other day. I don't remember why we started talking about it, but I had made the reference of like, well, we don't want to leave any trace behind. And he's 5, like I said. So of course he's, well, what do you mean? Well, what does that mean? Well, why can't we do that? And all the questions, right? And we were trying to explain exactly that. It's like we want to leave it how we found it or leave it better than how we found it would be ideal, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, and taking care of it for future generations. Like, and I just think of my son, like, I want these places to be around for him and I want
Yeah.
them to be, him to be able to enjoy them 50 years from now, you know? Such a good reminder.
Yes, absolutely.
If someone only has one afternoon in a park, how would you encourage them to just slow down and really appreciate what they're looking at and seeing in front of them?
Love that. Great question. I would say that, spending time outdoors is such a great way to inspire curiosity. And I think just being present and having that opportunity to observe a place and be still there is really powerful and very mindful. And, it's powerful to just sit and observe how light hits trees and rocks and water and how that can change throughout the day or even as we mentioned previously over a longer time span throughout the seasons. And I think, also too kind of pulling in that mindset for artists like your
Hmm.
audience with quilters. I think you can use these artistic observations to guide how you portray landscapes. Um, in your art form, whether that's quilting or painting. And I also believe that this time outdoors is very grounding. It's very calming for the nervous system and can really help you slow down and essentially practice mindfulness through observation.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. I know for me, I feel like such a huge part of that is disconnecting from technology too. And very conveniently, a lot of times national parks have, poor cell service, which I think is to our benefit, right? Just kind of disconnect, put the phone down. I think there's so many times we got caught up in trying to get the right photo and things like that, and just putting that away and then taking in, like you said, the sights and the smells and the sounds and just being mindful. I think that was a really beautiful way you put that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I love that you quilt. You're a quilter, like you talked about. Your grandmother actually taught you everything that you know about quilting. And I think there's such a deep overlap there, like you said, between experiencing and appreciating the outdoors and nature and our art form, which is quilting. As someone who quilts, do you see parallels between handcraft, patience, and just the way that we experience parks and landscapes?
Yeah, great question. I really love this one. So when I think about patience, I think that there are a lot of lessons that I personally have taken from quilting. So I have my grandma's old sewing machine that she bought in 2003, and I have had so many instances of it catching and making a big mess of the thread. And, I'm very well acquainted with my seam ripper to tear apart what I just sewed. And sometimes it feels quite frustrating that, it's
It is a rite of passage, right? As a quilter.
exactly. Exactly, it's just part of the process, it's like, it feels counterproductive, but you just gotta kinda go back through and take it out, and in that way, I think that quilting has been a great teacher of patience for me, and, I see parallels, as you mentioned, to nature. I think that when you visit parks, nature is such a great teacher of patience. For example, sometimes the weather may bring in a storm and it may steer you away from your plans of taking a hike. Or, maybe you visit a park and you have this goal of really wanting to see an iconic animal that the park is known for. And during your visit, you may or may not see that animal. So, that type of experience is a really great reminder to recognize what is in and out of our control and just, being patient for future opportunities if something doesn't work out on a certain day.
Do you think quilting changes the way that you see landscapes, such as like the color, composition, repetition, texture?
Good question. I love that. I think that that's something that, in my personal practice of quilting, I'm really looking forward to diving into more. My quilting is quite I'm a beginner, to be honest. I'm still learning some of the, simple practices of, piecing things together, binding quilts. I'm really trying to, get into the habit of just doing it as often as I can and getting down some of those basics. But in my quilting practice, I have dreams of, expanding my horizons and being a bit more creative with how to represent certain textures or different styles of quilting. I'm trying to get into applique, so trying to expand my boundaries there. So, um, I honestly will look to some of more experienced quilters to answer that one.
Yeah, okay. I'm right there with you. I feel like I'm also relatively a beginner. I mean, I've only been quilting for 5 or 6 years. So, and there's so much I still have like to learn, and I feel like I'm constantly learning.
Totally.
I have not tried applique yet. So, that one is on the bucket list.
Nice.
Right now, presently
Yes.
I'm trying to teach myself Y seams. So that's my current
Ooh,
quilting adventure.
very cool. I have not attempted that yet.
This is a first for me. This is a first for me. Have you ever been inspired by a specific park to create a quilt?
Great question. So in high school, actually, my grandma had visited a park in Alaska and had really actually been able to acquire some fabric with some iconic Alaska animals on it. And so I actually was able to work with my grandma to piece together a very basic, but, beautiful, meaningful quilt still that featured some of those iconic animals from Alaska. I remember, tracing around bald eagle and some grizzly bears. It was a really
Yeah.
special project to work on with her.
That is sweet. I love that. You said your grandma visited the park in Alaska?
Yes.
Which
Yes, I have
park?
not been to Alaska. Off of the top of my head, I cannot remember at the
Okay,
moment.
okay. Yeah, I haven't been to Alaska either. Again, it's on the list. It's on the bucket list.
Absolutely.
So, do you pack hand sewing on trips or does quilting live at home with you?
Yeah, good question. I have not up to this point, tried taking it out into the field. I think that's a wonderful thing to try. I just haven't gotten there yet. Just been quilting in my
Yeah. No, I can it's a whole other ball of wax when you try to take sewing and quilting outdoors, but I feel like I
totally.
aspire to do that more too. I don't do it very much, but every once in a while it's nice to just get a little hand sewing as you sit at your campsite or
Yeah,
whatever.
I love that idea.
Yeah, me too. Right? I love the idea of it, but like the practicality of it, it takes a little bit more.
Totally.
Okay. So our Quilt Scout members and our listeners hike with quilts and photograph them in natural light. Do you ever hike for quilt photos or take them out to get like a quilts in the wild pictures?
Honestly, I'm inspired personally by this conversation and I think I'm always looking for new sources of inspiration and ideas for quilting and I think, that sounds like a lovely idea to take it out into nature, especially, if you're using natural settings to inspire the quilting. I personally have not done that, but I love the idea of it.
Yeah, that's gonna be have to be your next adventure. Next time you go for a hike or go to a park, take a quilt. I feel like half the battle is finding like the right quilt, right? The perfect quilt. Small enough where you can pack it up and hike with it. Things like you have to
Yeah,
take those things into consideration, right?
totally.
You should totally try it. It's a ton of fun. And you get such pretty pictures. Such
Uh,
pretty pictures.
That's wonderful.
So, for listeners who may not visit national parks often, what's one simple way that they can start noticing and caring for the places around them?
Yeah, I would say that just getting into the practice of visiting local parks as often as you can, even whether that's managed by a city, a state, or a federal government, visiting a local park is really an excellent opportunity to immerse yourself in nature. And also, the American stories that the park has to offer. You can begin practicing mindfulness, as we talked about, by observing the landscape changes throughout the seasons. And really, I encourage folks to notice what you become curious about. And, maybe that will inspire more research, engagement, or hopefully a quilting project.
Is there one small habit that people can adopt that can make a big difference?
Great question. I would say, honestly, I encourage folks to visit nps.gov if they're interested in learning more about national parks and some of these, we mentioned in this, there's over 430 parks to learn about. So I would just encourage you honestly to go to the website and see if there's any parks near you, or even you can also search for parks by topic. So if there's a particular topic that you're interested in delving into, um, I would encourage you to explore the site and see if there's more information there, especially attuned to your personal interests.
So I will make sure to include that in the show notes, the link to nps.gov, because there is the Find Your Park feature, right? You can find parks near you, or you said you can filter it by different topics. Okay, that's good to
Yeah.
know.
Absolutely. I think that's a really great opportunity. And, even in preparing for this, I searched for, National Park Service and quilting since that has not, necessarily been the focus of my work in water resources. But,
Hmm.
there are absolutely park stories centered around quilting experiences. And so I encourage folks to delve into that and look for those opportunities and stories.
How can creative people, quilters, artists, makers of all sorts, participate in conservation?
Great question. I would say I think this kind of comes back to what we've talked about, but I love the idea of, you know, being present in these landscapes and taking the opportunity to learn about these park stories, learn about the park resources, and that may open up more curiosity about, delving in further to these stories and really becoming inquisitive to learn more, to see what you personally can do to protect and preserve these resources.
As we kind of wrap up the interview, I want to do like a rapid fire question. Are you up for that?
Oh,
You
sure.
just go with your
Yes.
gut. Don't overthink it. So, sunrise or sunset in a park?
Say sunset.
Okay. Mountains, desert, forest, or coastline?
Ooh, good question. I'd say mountains.
Okay, mine too. This one's an oddball one, but favorite park smell?
Ooh, good question. I love the smell of kind of fresh rain. I think it's petrichor.
Is that what it's called? Doesn't
Yeah, there's a word to describe it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's such a lovely smell.
I agree. Yes, that's a good one. A park snack that you always bring.
Often it's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
That's the perfect
It's
hiking
a
snack.
classic.
Yes, it's classic. It's packable, you know. And then last one, hand quilting or machine quilting?
For now, machine quilting.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Thank you. So, Brooke, if listeners are feeling inspired and want to learn more, whether that's following along with the National Park Service, planning a visit, or just staying connected to the stories, where's the best place for them to go? Is there a website or like an Instagram handle that you recommend?
So I would recommend going to nps.gov for more information about the 430 plus parks in the national park system. As we've mentioned, there's opportunity to search for parks by state or by topic, to learn more about what you're interested in, or look locally to what is near to you. And also, on that site, you can find the social media outlets for the National Park Service.
Okay.
There's the national account, or if you're interested in a specific park story, you can go to individual park websites and find their social media information or park information there.
Okay. And I will make sure to link that in the show notes so we can make it easy for people to find. And then as far as ways to get involved, we had kind of talked about this a little bit, but there's the Find Your Park campaign, which you can go and search for national parks. There's the National Park Foundation, right, which supports parks through donations and programs. And then we also talked a little bit about the Junior Rangers program, which you said you were a junior ranger, but that program is still happening, right, for kiddos that want to be junior rangers.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a bit about the Junior Rangers program? Because I would like to know more, and I'm sure our listeners would too.
So, when you go to visit a park, I would look for opportunities in the Park Visitor Center for junior ranger opportunities. So, often, you'll go to a park visitor center and you can have a conversation with a park ranger to get yourself and your kiddo acquainted with the park's programming for becoming a junior ranger that might involve some sort of scavenger hunt or, workbook as you're going through your park visit, and may even at the end come with a little junior ranger badge. So we encourage folks to seek out those opportunities in parks. And then there are also opportunities on nps.gov for junior rangers to participate virtually as well. So if you can't make it to a park in person, don't worry, there's opportunities online as well.
I didn't know that. Like a virtual experience for, like I said,
Yes,
if you can't get there physically. Oh, that's really good to know.
exactly.
Okay, I'm gonna have to dig into that a little bit more. I love that. Because I got to miss out on that opportunity as a kid. But now I'm just gonna get to live vicariously through my kiddo. He's gonna have to be a junior ranger so that I can experience it.
That's awesome. So, one other way that folks can engage with national parks is looking for volunteer opportunities. And same thing, go ahead and search nps.gov and go to the volunteer section of the website. And there should be plenty of opportunities, especially you can look for topics or parks that are of interest to you to really get engaged and work hand in hand with park staff to help protect and preserve the park resources. And another opportunity that may be of interest to some of our quilters in your audience, there is a artist in residence program that the National Park Service offers to provide short but really meaningful opportunities for artists to live at parks and dedicate time to create art for the park. So you can go ahead and go to nps.gov and search for the Artists in Residence program and learn more about how you could potentially get involved at a park that's of interest to you.
I love that. That sounds really fun. Like talk about an adventure. And I'm guessing that's open to all artists. So painters, photographers, and quilters would be included in that, right?
Absolutely, yes.
I have to see, you're giving me inspiration too. We're inspiring each other this episode because I'm going to be digging around on MPS Gov today looking for fun things. So thank
I
you.
love it. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Brooke, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking to us about what you do at National Park Service and your experience as a quilter. This was such a fun conversation, and I just really appreciate you taking the time to do it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Megan. I appreciate you as well, and have a great day.
If you enjoyed this episode, I would love for you to follow or subscribe to the Quilt Scouts podcast so you don't miss future episodes. And if you have a minute, leaving a review is one of the best ways to help this podcast find other quilters who could use a little creativity and community too. You can find show notes and more from Quilt Scouts at quiltscouts.com. Until next time, happy Trail Scout.